White woman, fleeing a cruel fate among her own people, ends up in the hands of a Sioux tribe. But when she throws herself between a child and a bullet, everything changes. What will a chief do when honor, love, and ancient laws collide in the middle of the American frontier? Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The summer sun blazed mercilessly over the Dakota Territory in 1867, casting long shadows across the Lakota encampment nestled beside the winding Missouri River. Smoke rose from cooking fires, carrying the scent of roasted buffalo meat through the warm air. Children laughed and played near the water's edge, while women worked on stretching hides outside their teepees. It was a moment of peace in a time when peace had become increasingly rare. Wikasayamni, whose name meant 3 eagles, stood at the edge of the camp, his dark eyes scanning the horizon with the practiced wariness of a chief who had seen too many battles. At 32 winters, he was young to lead, but the strength in his broad shoulders and the wisdom in his gaze had earned him the respect of every warrior in his tribe. His long black hair, adorned with 3 eagle feathers marking his chieftainship, moved slightly in the breeze. Beside him stood his son, Hinto, a boy of 8 summers with eyes as bright and curious as a young fox. "Father, when will you teach me to hunt the buffalo?" Hinto asked, bouncing on his feet with barely contained energy. The boy wore simple buckskin clothing, his small hands already calloused from practicing with his wooden bow. Wikasayamni placed a strong hand on his son's shoulder, a rare smile softening his usually stern features. "Soon, little warrior. First, you must learn patience. A hunter who cannot be still cannot feed his people." The moment of tranquility shattered when a warrior named Ohanzi came running from the northern ridge, his face tight with urgency. "Chief, settlers approach. They have wagons and many guns." Wikasayamni's expression hardened instantly. "How many?" "Perhaps 20 men, with women and children. They camp near the sacred hills, cutting trees for their settlement." The chief's jaw clenched. The sacred hills were burial grounds, places where their ancestors rested. To desecrate them was an unforgivable offense. "Gather the warriors. We will speak with them first, but we will be prepared." As Ohanzi ran to alert the others, Wikasayamni knelt before his son. "Go to your grandmother's teepee. Stay there until I return." "But father, I want to come with you. I can help. You help me most by being safe." Wikasayamni's voice carried the weight of command, but his eyes held deep affection. "Obey me in this, Hinto." The boy's shoulders slumped, but he nodded and turned toward the camp. Wikasayamni watched him go, a knot of worry tightening in his chest. Every day brought new encroachments, new violations of the treaties that the white men signed but never honored. He had tried to keep his people away from conflict, moving their camp deeper into the territory their ancestors had roamed for generations. But the settlers kept coming, hungry for land that was not theirs to take. Within minutes, 20 warriors had assembled, each man painted and armed. They rode north toward the sacred hills, their horses' hooves thundering across the prairie grass. Wikasayamni led them, his heart heavy with the knowledge that words rarely worked anymore, but his honor demanded he try. The settler camp came into view as the sun began its descent. Wagons formed a rough circle, and men with rifles stood guard while women tended fires. Children played between the wagons, unaware of the tension crackling in the air. Wikasayamni raised his hand, bringing his warriors to a halt at a respectful distance. "I will speak with their leader," he announced in Lakota. "Keep watch, but do not attack unless they fire first." He rode forward alone, a gesture of peace, though his hand rested near the knife at his belt. A tall man with a thick beard and cold blue eyes stepped forward from the settlers' group. Behind him stood other men, their rifles pointed toward the ground but ready. "This land is sacred to my people," Wikasayamni said in carefully practiced English, his accent thick but his words clear. "You cannot build here. There are other places. Go south beyond the river." The bearded man spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "We got papers from the government saying this land is open for settlement. You Indians need to move along to your reservation." "We have papers too, treaty papers. This land is ours." "Your treaties don't mean nothing now. Things have changed. You can leave peaceful, or we can make you leave." Wikasayamni felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. but he kept his voice steady. We are many. You are few. It is you who should leave peacefully. The settler's hand moved toward his rifle. That a threat, savage? Everything happened at once. A young settler, nervous and trigger-happy, fired his weapon. The bullet whistled past Wicasa Yamni's head. His warriors, seeing their chief under attack, charged forward with war cries that split the evening air. The settlers scrambled for their weapons, and suddenly the peaceful prairie erupted into chaos. Wicasa Yamni wheeled his horse around, shouting commands to his warriors while dodging gunfire. He saw Ohanzi fall from his horse, blood blooming on his shoulder. Another warrior, Wanatan, dragged him to safety as arrows flew and rifles cracked. The settlers had better weapons, but the Lakota had numbers and the advantage of mounted combat. A woman's scream cut through the battle noise. Wicasa Yamni turned to see a young white woman emerge from behind a wagon, terror written across her delicate features. She had golden hair that caught the dying sunlight and green eyes wide with fear. She ran toward the trees, away from the fighting, her blue dress torn and dirty from the journey west. Two warriors on horseback pursued her, not understanding that she was fleeing the battle rather than escaping as an enemy. Wicasa Yamni kicked his horse into a gallop, racing to intercept them. "Stop, let her go, she is not a threat." But his words were lost in the chaos. The woman stumbled and fell near a cluster of cottonwood trees. The warriors circled her, raising their weapons. She curled into a ball, arms over her head, waiting for death that she was certain would come. Wicasa Yamni rode between them and the woman, his voice thundering with authority. "I said stop. She is my prisoner, mine alone." The warriors, surprised by their chief's intervention, lowered their weapons and backed away. The battle behind them was ending as the settlers, outnumbered and outmaneuvered, raised their hands in surrender. But Wicasa Yamni's attention was fixed on the trembling woman at his feet. He dismounted slowly, approaching her as he would a frightened deer. "I will not hurt you," he said in English, keeping his voice low and calm. "Come, you are safe now." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face, and he saw something in her eyes that surprised him. Not just fear, but also a fierce determination to survive. This woman, whoever she was, had a warrior's spirit beneath her fragile appearance. The journey back to the Lakota encampment was silent, except for the rhythmic sound of horses' hooves and the occasional murmur of wounded warriors being tended. Wicasa Yamni had placed the white woman on his horse, seated in front of him, while he maintained a respectful distance. She sat rigid with fear, her body trembling despite the warm evening air. He could feel her shallow breathing, sense the terror radiating from her small frame. "What is your name?" he asked softly in English as they rode. She didn't answer at first, her hands gripping the horse's mane so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she replied, Sarah Mitchell. I am Wicasa Yamni. It means 3 eagles. You are not harmed?" "No," she whispered, then added with surprising boldness, "But the others? The people from my wagon train? They live. We took their weapons. They will leave our sacred land and go south as I asked." He paused, feeling her body relax slightly against him. "Why did you run toward the trees?" Sarah's voice broke as she answered, "I was trying to hide. My husband, he died 3 weeks ago from fever. His brother Jacob, the man you spoke with, he said I had to marry him now. Said it was my duty. But he's cruel and I couldn't. When the fighting started, I saw my chance to escape from him. Not from you." Wicasa Yamni processed this information in silence. This woman had been fleeing her own people, running from a fate she feared more than death in the wilderness. There was courage in that, a kind of strength he recognized and respected. When they arrived at the camp, the entire tribe had gathered, faces tense with anticipation. They had heard the sounds of battle from afar. Women clutched their children close, while elders stood in solemn groups, waiting to hear what had transpired. Wicasa Yamni dismounted and helped Sarah down, steadying her when her legs nearly gave way beneath her. An elderly woman with silver braids and sharp, intelligent eyes approached. This was Wasula, the chief's grandmother and the tribe's most respected elder. She looked Sarah up and down with an expression that revealed nothing. "Why do you bring this Wasikyu woman to our camp, grandson?" Wasula asked in Lakota, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. She is my captive, Wakasa Yamni replied in the same language. She will remain here under my protection until I decide what is to be done with her. Wasula's eyes narrowed. The people will not accept this easily. Many have lost family to the white settlers. They will want revenge. Then they will have to go through their chief first. His voice held steel beneath the respect. This woman has done our people no harm. She will be treated with dignity. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some voices raised in protest, others in curious agreement. Before the discussion could continue, a small figure pushed through the gathering. Hinto ran toward his father, relief flooding his young face. "Father, you are safe. I was so worried." The boy stopped short when he saw Sarah, his eyes widening with curiosity rather than fear. "Who is she?" "Her name is Sarah. She will be staying with us for a time." Wakasa Yamni placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "Show her the kindness our people are known for, little warrior." Hinto stepped closer to Sarah, studying her with the unfiltered directness of childhood. "Your hair looks like the sun," he said in halting English that his father had taught him. "Are you hungry? Grandmother makes good soup." Despite her fear and exhaustion, Sarah felt a small smile tug at her lips. This child's innocence was a light in the darkness of her terror. "Yes," she replied gently. "I am very hungry." Wasula sighed, recognizing that her grandson had made his decision and would not be swayed. "She can sleep in my teepee. I will watch her." The old woman switched to heavily accented English. "Come, Wasiku woman. You smell like fear and dirt. We wash, then eat." Sarah looked to Wakasa Yamni, uncertainty clear in her green eyes. He nodded encouragingly. "My grandmother's words are sharp, but her heart is good. You will be safe with her." As Wasula led Sarah away, Hinto tugging at the white woman's hand and chattering excitedly, Wakasa Yamni felt the weight of many eyes upon him. He turned to face his people, knowing he owed them an explanation. "I know many of you question my decision," he began, his voice carrying the authority of leadership. "We have suffered at the hands of the Wasiku, this is true, but we are not them. We do not harm those who have done us no wrong. This woman is alone, without protection, fleeing from cruelty. Would you have me abandon the honor our ancestors taught us?" An older warrior named Mado spoke up, his face scarred from many battles. "What if she brings more settlers here? What if this is a trick? She did not choose to come here. I brought her. The responsibility is mine alone." Wakasa Yamni met each person's gaze steadily. "If you trust me to lead you in war, trust me to lead you in this as well." Slowly, the crowd began to disperse, though many cast doubtful glances toward Wasula's teepee. Wakasa Yamni stood alone, watching the sun complete its descent below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He wondered if he had made the right choice, knowing that the path ahead would be difficult for everyone, especially for Sarah. Inside the teepee, Sarah sat on soft buffalo robes, while Wasula heated water over a small fire. The old woman's movements were efficient and practiced, her face still unreadable. Hinto sat cross-legged nearby, his eyes following Sarah's every move with fascination. "My father is the strongest warrior in all the tribes," Hinto announced proudly. "He has counted coup many times and never shows fear." "Hinto," Wasula said sharply, "let the woman rest. You talk like a magpie." The boy's face fell, but Sarah reached out and touched his hand gently. "I would like to hear about your father. It helps me not to be so frightened." Hinto's face brightened immediately. "He taught me to track rabbits and to know which plants are good for eating. He says a warrior must know the earth as well as he knows his own hands. And he tells the best stories about our ancestors and the great buffalo hunts before the Wasiku came and changed everything." Sarah listened, seeing the deep love the boy held for his father. It reminded her painfully of her own father, long dead, who had filled her childhood with stories and laughter. "Your father sounds like a very good man," she said softly. "He is the best," Hinto declared with absolute certainty. Wasula brought over a bowl of warm water and a cloth. "Wash," she commanded Sarah, then softened slightly. "You are safe here, Wasiku woman. My grandson has given his word, and he never breaks his word. But you must understand, many here have lost family to your people. They watch you with anger in their hearts. I understand, Sarah whispered. I've lost family too. To disease, to this harsh land. I never wanted to come west, but my husband believed in new beginnings. Her voice caught. Now he's gone, and I have nothing. Wasula studied her for a long moment, seeing past the surface to the grief and loneliness beneath. You have life. That is something. The rest, we will see. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sounds of the camp coming alive around her. Women called to one another as they began their daily tasks. Children laughed and played, and somewhere nearby, she could hear men discussing the previous day's battle. She sat up slowly, her body aching from sleeping on the ground despite the softness of the buffalo robes. Wasula was already awake, preparing a simple breakfast of corn mush and dried berries. Eat, she said, handing Sarah a wooden bowl. Then you work. Everyone works in this camp, even Sioux prisoners. Sarah accepted the bowl gratefully, surprised by how hungry she was. The food was different from what she was accustomed to, but it was warm and filling. As she ate, Hinto burst into the teepee, his face urgent with worry. Grandmother, father needs the woman. There are settlers coming and they have many guns. Sarah's heart seized with terror as she followed Hinto out of the teepee, Wasula close behind. The camp was in controlled chaos, warriors gathering weapons while women ushered children to safety. In the center of it all stood Wikasa Yamni, his face carved from stone as he barked orders in Lakota. When he saw Sarah, his expression shifted slightly, concern flickering in his dark eyes. They come for you, he said in English, his voice low and urgent. 20 men, maybe more. They carry a white flag, but also many rifles. Your people want you returned. Sarah's hands trembled. She knew who led them. Jacob. He wouldn't accept her escape so easily, wouldn't let go of his claim to her as his brother's widow. They'll kill you all if I don't go, she whispered, her voice breaking. Jacob won't stop. He's a cruel man who sees me as property, nothing more. Wikasa Yamni's jaw tightened. You are under my protection now. No one takes what is mine without my permission. But your people, your son, they'll die because of me. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. The thought of Hinto being hurt because she had been too cowardly to face Jacob was unbearable. Before Wikasa Yamni could respond, a warrior ran up, gesturing frantically toward the northern approach. The chief touched Sarah's shoulder briefly, a gesture meant to be reassuring, then strode toward his horse. Stay here. Stay safe. But Sarah couldn't stay. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. She had already caused enough suffering by running. Perhaps if she showed herself, if she spoke to Jacob, she could convince him to leave peacefully. It was a desperate hope, but it was all she had. As Wikasa Yamni and a dozen warriors rode out to meet the approaching settlers, Sarah slipped away from Wasula's watchful eye. She ran toward the edge of camp, her lungs burning, her dress catching on brush and thorns. She could see the line of mounted settlers in the distance, see the glint of sunlight on their rifle barrels. And at the front, unmistakable even from afar, was Jacob Mitchell's hulking form. Sarah, no! The shout came from behind her. She turned to see Hinto running after her, his small face twisted with panic. Father said to stay. You must stay. Go back, Hinto. It's not safe. Sarah tried to wave him away, but the boy was determined, closing the distance between them with the speed of youth. In her distraction, she didn't see the settlers split off from their main group, didn't notice the 3 men circling wide through the tall grass. Wikasa Yamni, positioned between the 2 groups, saw everything unfold with horrifying clarity. He saw Sarah emerge from the camp against his orders. He saw his son chasing after her, and he saw the flanking settlers raising their rifles, not at him, but at the running figures. Time seemed to slow as he kicked his horse into a desperate gallop, his heart thundering with a fear he had never known in battle. Hinto, get down! His scream tore from his throat in Lakota, then in English. Sarah, take cover! Sarah heard the urgency in his voice and turned, finally seeing the danger. One of the settlers, a young man with nervous hands, fired. The bullet sang through the air where Hinto's head had been a moment before. Sarah didn't think. She dove forward, catching the boy and rolling with him behind a small rise in the prairie, her body covering his completely. Another shot rang out, this one closer. Sarah felt the impact, a searing pain that blossomed across her left shoulder. She gasped, but held Hinto tighter, feeling his small body trembling beneath her. "Stay down," she whispered fiercely. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." Wikasa Yamni reached them seconds later, throwing himself from his horse. His warriors had engaged the flanking settlers, driving them back with a fury that spoke of violated honor. But the chief's entire focus was on the two figures huddled on the ground. He saw the blood spreading across Sarah's dress, saw his son's terrified eyes, and felt something crack open inside his chest. "Hinto," he breathed, pulling his son from beneath Sarah's protective embrace. His hands ran over the boy, checking for injuries, relief flooding through him when he found none. "You are well. You are not hurt." "I'm fine, father," Hinto said, his voice shaking. "But Sarah, she's bleeding. She saved me. The bullet was going to hit me, but she pushed me down." Wikasa Yamni turned to Sarah, who had rolled onto her back, her face pale and drawn with pain. The wound in her shoulder bled steadily, staining the prairie grass beneath her. He pressed his hand against it, applying pressure, while his other hand cupped her face. "Why?" he demanded, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't name. "Why did you not stay as I commanded? Why did you risk yourself?" Sarah's green eyes met his, clear despite the pain. "Because I couldn't let innocent people die for me. Because Hinto deserves to grow up with his father. Because," she paused, breathing hard, "because running away has never solved anything. I learned that too late with my husband, never standing up to those who wanted to control my life. I won't make that mistake again." In that moment, looking into her eyes, Wikasa Yamni saw the truth he had sensed from the beginning. This woman was no fragile flower to be protected and pitied. She was a warrior in her own right, with a courage that matched any of his fighters, and she had used that courage to save his son, the most precious thing in his world. The sound of approaching horses made him look up. Jacob Mitchell and his men had advanced, taking advantage of the chaos. They sat in a line, weapons ready, while Wikasa Yamni's warriors formed a defensive position. The two groups faced each other across 30 yards of grass, tension crackling like lightning before a storm. Jacob's voice boomed across the distance. "Give us back the woman and we'll leave peaceful. She's my brother's widow, my responsibility. You got no right to keep her." Wikasa Yamni stood slowly, keeping himself between Sarah and the settlers. His hand still pressed against her wound, feeling her blood warm and sticky against his palm. "The woman stays," he called back, his English clear and unwavering. "She is free. She chooses her own path. She don't get to choose. She's family property." Jacob's face reddened with anger. "You savages don't understand civilized law." "I understand that your civilized law treats women as cattle," Wikasa Yamni replied, his voice cutting. "I understand that she ran from you because you would hurt her. I understand that she just took a bullet meant for my son, and that makes her more brave than any of you." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You speak of law. Here is Lakota law. She has shown great courage and saved the life of my child. For this she has earned her freedom and a place among our people, if she chooses it." Sarah struggled to sit up, ignoring Wikasa Yamni's attempt to keep her still. Her voice, though weakened by pain, carried clearly. "Jacob, I don't want to marry you, I never did. Your brother was kind to me, but you've shown me nothing but cruelty since he died. These people have treated me with more dignity in 2 days than you have in weeks." "You're confused, Sarah," Jacob said, his voice taking on a false gentleness that made her skin crawl. "You've been through trauma. Come back with us, and we'll forget this happened. We'll get you proper medical care, get you back to civilization where you belong." "I belong wherever I choose to be," Sarah said firmly, then looked up at Wikasa Yamni. "If your people will have me, I would like to stay. I have nursing skills. I can help tend the wounded. I can learn your ways. I want to stay." Wikasa Yamni looked down at her, something profound passing between them in that shared gaze. He saw her determination, her strength, and beneath it all, a loneliness that mirrored his own. Since his wife had died in childbirth 3 years ago, He had focused solely on his son and his people, building walls around his heart. But this Sioux woman with sun-colored hair and warrior's courage had somehow begun to breach those walls. "Then you stay," he said softly, before turning back to Jacob. "You have your answer. She chooses freely. Honor her choice, or face the consequences." Jacob's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this, both of you. I'll bring the army down on your heads. Enough!" The command came from an unexpected source. One of Jacob's own men, an older settler with gray in his beard, rode forward. "Jacob, let it go. The woman's made her choice clear as day. You push this further and we'll all end up dead, and for what? Your pride?" He looked at Sarah with something like respect. "Ma'am, you take care of yourself. You've shown more backbone than most men I know." Slowly, reluctantly, the other settlers began to turn their horses. Jacob remained frozen, fury and humiliation warring on his face. Finally, with a curse that carried across the prairie, he yanked his horse around and spurred it away. The threat had passed, but everyone knew it was a temporary reprieve. Men like Jacob never truly let go. Yamni lifted Sarah carefully, cradling her against his chest as he stood. She was light in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder. "We must tend your wound," he said quietly. "You have lost much blood." "Will I live?" she asked, trying to smile despite the pain. "Yes," he replied with certainty. "You are too stubborn to die." The journey back to camp was slow and careful. Hinto rode beside his father, his small hand reaching out periodically to touch Sarah's arm, as if reassuring himself she was still there. When they arrived, Wasula was waiting, her expression unreadable as always, but her movements were swift and purposeful as she directed them to her teepee. For the next 3 days, Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness while Wasula worked her healing skills, packing the wound with medicinal herbs and changing the dressings regularly. Into rarely left her side, telling her stories about the tribe, about his mother who he barely remembered, about the dreams he had of becoming a great warrior like his father. And Yamni came every evening, sitting silently beside her, sometimes speaking in Lakota, sometimes in English, his deep voice a comforting presence in the darkness. He told her about his people's history, about the sacred hills and the buffalo herds that had once covered the plains like a brown sea. He spoke of his fears for the future, of the shrinking territory and the broken promises of the white government. On the 4th morning, Sarah woke to find her head clear and the pain manageable. She sat up slowly, testing her body's limits, and found Yamni watching her from across the teepee. The morning light filtered through the hide walls, casting his strong features in soft gold. "You should rest more," he said, but there was approval in his eyes at seeing her alert. "I've rested enough," Sarah replied. "Your grandmother says I'm healing well, and I'm tired of lying still. Besides, I meant what I said. I want to help. I want to earn my place here. You have already earned it." Yamni moved closer, sitting beside her on the buffalo robes. "You saved my son. There is no greater gift you could have given me. But I must ask you, Sarah Mitchell, are you certain this is what you want? Life here is hard. Many of my people still view you with suspicion. The Sioux government will see you as a traitor, and men like Jacob do not forget." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I've never been more certain of anything. In my old life, I was property to be traded between men. Here, even as a captive, I was treated with more respect than I ever received in the settlement. You asked me to choose, and I have. I choose this. I choose freedom." Something shifted in Yamni's expression, his carefully maintained distance crumbling. "Then you are no longer a captive. You are Waste Lakapi, one who is loved, one who belongs. You are free among us." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning beyond their surface. Sarah felt her breath catch as she realized the truth that had been growing in her heart since that first terrifying night. She had not just found safety with this tribe. She had found something she had been searching for her entire life without knowing it. A place where she could be strong, where her courage was valued, where she was seen as a whole person, rather than a possession. "And you?" she asked softly, her heart pounding. "What do you choose, Yamni?" He reached out, his calloused hand gentle as it cupped her face. I choose to see where this path leads. I choose to know the woman who would risk her life for a child not her own. I choose, he paused, searching for the right words in English, to let my heart be open again. Their lips met in a kiss that was tender and searching, a promise of possibility. When they parted, both were breathing hard, the weight of unspoken emotions filling the space between them. The sound of running feet made them pull apart. Hinto burst into the teepee, his face alight with excitement. "Father, Sarah, come quickly. A herd of elk has been spotted near the river, and grandmother says Sarah is well enough to come watch the hunt from the ridge." Wikasa Yamni laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Your timing, little warrior, is both terrible and perfect." He stood, offering his hand to Sarah. "Can you walk?" "With help," she admitted, taking his hand and letting him pull her gently to her feet. Her shoulder protested, but the pain was bearable. "I want to see everything. I want to learn your ways." As they emerged from the teepee into the bright morning sun, the entire camp seemed to pause. The tribe watched as their chief stood beside the Wasiku woman, his hand supporting her elbow, Hinto dancing excitedly between them. It was Wasula who broke the silence, her weathered face finally showing a hint of approval. "The spirits work in mysterious ways," she announced in Lakota, her voice carrying across the camp. "They brought this woman to us for a purpose. She has proven her worth with blood and courage. Let any who doubt her step forward now." No one moved. Slowly, one by one, the people nodded their acceptance. A young woman came forward, offering Sarah a shawl woven in the traditional patterns. An elder warrior touched his hand to his heart in a gesture of respect. Children who had watched her with fear now smiled shyly. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she understood what was happening. She was being accepted, truly accepted, not as a captive or an outsider, but as one of them. "Thank you," she whispered in halting Lakota, the words Wasula had taught her. "Pilamaya." Wikasa Yamni's hand tightened on hers. "Come," he said softly. "Let me show you the land my people have loved for generations. Let me show you your new home." They walked together to the ridge overlooking the valley, Hinto running ahead to point out landmarks and animals. The prairie stretched endlessly in all directions, golden grass rippling like water in the wind. Buffalo grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the brilliant sky. It was beautiful and harsh and utterly free. Sarah breathed deeply, feeling something settle in her chest. For the first time since her husband's death, perhaps for the first time in her entire life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Not because someone had given her permission, but because she had chosen it, had fought for it, had earned it with her own courage. "What are you thinking?" Wikasa Yamni asked, watching her face. "I'm thinking that I was so afraid when you first captured me. I thought my life was over." She turned to him, her green eyes bright with unshed tears and newfound joy. But it wasn't ending. It was finally beginning. He smiled, an expression that transformed his stern features into something warm and open. "Then let us begin it together, Sarah Mitchell. Let us see what the future holds." Hinto appeared between them, grabbing both their hands. "Look, the hunters are riding out. Father, will you teach Sarah to ride like the Lakota? She should learn." "I will teach her many things," Wikasa Yamni said, looking not at his son but at Sarah. "And she will teach us as well. That is how we grow stronger together." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the three of them stood together on the ridge, watching the hunters ride out across the prairie. It was a new beginning for all of them, a family being formed not by blood or obligation, but by choice and courage, and the profound connections that arise when people truly see each other. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges from both the tribe and the outside world. Jacob's threats would not be empty, and the encroachment of settlers would continue. But standing there together, Sarah knew they would face it all side by side. She had found her place, her purpose, and perhaps, if the spirits were kind, her true love. Wikasa Yamni looked down at the woman beside him, the woman who had crashed into his life like summer lightning, changing everything. He had spent 3 years keeping his heart closed, focusing only on duty and his son's well-being. But Sarah had awakened something he thought had died with his wife, the ability to hope, to feel. to love again. Wastesisila, he whispered in Lakota, the words for I love you carrying on the wind. Sarah didn't understand the words yet, but she understood the emotion behind them. She leaned into his strength, feeling safe and valued and completely, wonderfully free. Teach me to say it, she requested softly. Teach me to tell you in your language what my heart already knows. And so he did, there on the ridge with his son laughing beside them and the vast prairie spreading endlessly before them. He taught her the words of love, and she repeated them carefully, her accent clumsy but her meaning clear. Around them, the Lakota camp continued its daily rhythm, and life went on, forever changed, but moving forward into a future that held both uncertainty and promise. This was her home now. These were her people. And this man, this strong and honorable chief who had seen her worth when she could barely see it herself, would be her partner in the journey ahead. Together, they would build something new, a bridge between two worlds, held together by courage, respect, and love.